You know, one of the things that you should always remember about the Libertarian Party is that we are not a top-down party. We are a bottom-up party. My job is to do what you want. So let me know how I can help you.
All right.
All right, and are we coming up on Spike?
We are coming up on Spike.
There he is right now. I would like to welcome to the 2021 convention of the Utah Libertarian Party, Mr. Spike Cohen. Yeah!
Thank you all so much. I'm always nervous when I start these because I didn't do a sound check. Okay, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, folks, thanks so much for having me here at your convention. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to make it. This was one of my rare days to be able to spend a weekend with my wife for her upcoming birthday. So, but I am happy to be here, and I can't wait to come back in person again. One of my favorite stops was in Salt Lake City. I remember all the people that showed up, and when we were doing photos by the Capitol building there, someone told me to turn around, and I got to see the mountains, Purple Mountain's Majesty in person. I still got my show stuff up. That's great. So anyway, I got to see that, and I really enjoyed. This is much better being able to see the audience now. But I really got to enjoy taking part and being there in Utah, and I'm happy to be here now. And I'm honored to see so many amazing people there that are doing the work that needs to be done in Utah to set Utah and the people of Utah free. So give yourselves a round of applause for doing that. Folks, I have a couple questions for you, and you watching at home, you can answer as well. Who here is ready to end the Fed and to end the wars and to end taxation and to end the harm being done to individuals and communities across the country? And I probably don't even need to ask, but I will anyway. Who here is ready to do what we talk about? Fighting for a world set free in our lifetime, fighting the cult of the omnipotent state. That's good to hear. That's good. I'd probably log off if you had said no, but that's good to hear. Here's the reality, though. In order to do that, we need to fight against the narratives behind why people aren't voting for us, why people aren't joining us. We have an incredible group of activists, of delegates, of candidates, people that are doing the hard work to spread the word of liberty, but we often are facing a lot of uphill battles, not including the ballot access laws and the things that we really have no control over until we get into those places of power and dismantle those. But there are many things that we can fight now. Last year, I ran for vice president, as you know, and Joe Jorgensen and I went around the country. Between the two of us, we went to, I believe, 47 states or 48 states. I always forget which one it is. I myself went to 35 states, including Utah, had something like close to 100 campaign stops, met with tens of thousands of people, talked to hundreds of thousands of more online, and got to spread the message of liberty, got to talk with people who had never heard our message before, and got to work to spread the message of libertarianism. And the proof of the work that Joe and I and y'all did across the country, the proof's in the pudding. Our membership, national membership, grew by almost 50% last year. The number of libertarians that are registered across the country grew by something like 10% last year to an all-time high. A lot of great things happen. We also got many people elected across the country. Joe and I got I keep forgetting what it is. I think 1.2%, 1.3%, something like that. And that was very disappointing for a lot of people. I know I was disappointed. Something funny happened the next day, though. I wake up the next morning and I have all these text messages and missed phone calls and voicemails from people who are congratulating me. And I got phone calls and people calling and saying, "Hey, congratulations." And I go, "Hey, thanks. What are you congratulating me for?" And they'd say, "Well, you know, you got the second highest vote total that the Libertarian Party's ever gotten, and you got more votes than any Libertarian's ever gotten in a presidential re-election race. And it's the first time that the Libertarian Party has come in third in all 50 states. And the gap between us and the other third parties is the widest it's ever been. Congratulations." And I said, "Well, those are all positive things, yes. But the reality is, and this is a very brutal reality to have to face, and it's a tough conversation we need to have. The reality is Joe and I scored below the margin of error for most public opinion polls. This speaks to the fact that two things. One, most people have not heard of libertarians yet. And here's the other thing. Many people who have heard of libertarians are not voting libertarian, at least at the top of the ticket. Now, we've seen all the opinion polls, anywhere from 60 to 70% of people, depending on which poll you believe, say that America needs a viable third party. And we hear that, we go, that's great news. We're the Libertarian Party. We're a viable third party. You can vote for us. And those people look at us and go, yeah, so anyway, like I was saying, we need a viable third party. What they're saying is we need a viable third party that I think can win. And that's where the rub is. Now, some of it we can't fight immediately, right? Like if someone says, I can't vote for you at the national level unless you can win, we can sit there and argue with them and say, well, we'd win if you voted for us. But the reality is they don't want to be those first movers. They're scared that their vote for their lesser evil candidate is going to be thrown away voting for us. And we don't have ranked choice voting or approval voting in the vast majority of states. So they're just scared to do it. So we have to look at why they're not voting for us, the reasons that they give. And instead of sloughing them off and saying, oh, well, you're just ignorant or whatever. We have to actually see why they're saying it and see how we can fight it. The three biggest narratives that I heard when people would come to my events and say that, we think that you and Joe are the best people running for president. We think that the other libertarians that showed up here, the down ballot candidates that showed up that they have the best ideas, but we're not going to vote for you because the three biggest answers I would get are, you can't win. Your ideas sound great, but I don't know if they're actually going to work. And the all-time favorite, I only hear from you for a few months every 4 years right before election day. Where are you the rest of the time? Now, that's the external problem we have. The internal problem that we have is what often happens when people aren't given actionable goals. We all have the same aspirational goals that I talked about: ending the Fed, ending the wars, ending taxation, at least limiting government. Some of us want to limit it all the way down to zero. And, all these different goals that we have, and these are laudable goals, but because we don't really have a solid blueprint on how to get there, we have many different ideas of how to get there. A lot of them involve wishful thinking about, a strongman candidate that's going to come in and set the world on fire and get on the debate stage and end up in the White House. When that doesn't happen, we often end up attacking each other because we don't have something to work on. One of the silver linings of the ballot access fight that we have in all 50 states is it actually gives us something to come together and fight together for. There are many different issues here. The biggest one is that, and I say this with all of the love of someone who believes that this is the only viable vehicle to achieve freedom at the electoral level in our time. We have a culture of losing in this party, and we need to turn it into a culture of winning. Now, let me tell you what a culture of losing means. Every 4 years, we have a cycle that we go through. It starts right around now, actually during the convention season, right after the last presidential election. We get together and we talk about all the great things we're going to do when we take over the White House, when we take over the Senate, when we take over Congress, and we take over our state houses and governor's mansions, and we set the world free. We end the Fed and we end the wars and we do all these great things, set people free from cages, and liberty wins in our time, and we take over the world and leave everyone alone. And then we spend 4 years looking for the candidate or candidates that are going to do that for us. And we argue with each other over things that most people don't even know are issues or concerns. And some of us do incredible work to get people elected at the local level, to grow their local and state affiliates, to build up membership, to do the things that we need to do. But often that gets lost in the fighting and the bickering and the infighting and the gatekeeping and all of the things that happen. And then when it's time for us to actually pick our candidate, we do. And we say, okay, when this candidate gets on the debate stage, they're going to set the world on fire. Everyone's going to hear their ideas, and it's going to bring our libertarian moment, and we're going to win. And then we don't get on the debate stage because we don't get included in the opinion polls. And in the opinion polls, we do get included, and we don't get anywhere near the 15% that we need to qualify anyway. And then we end up getting 1%, 3%, 0.5%, 2%, whatever. We end up getting, basically the margin of error, and we don't win. And then many of us shake our fists in the air and say, well, the system's rigged against us, which is true. It is rigged against us. Corporate media will never get us a fair shake. They're never going to let us on the debate stage. All hope is lost. And then we lick our wounds over the holiday season, and we come right back here for convention season to start the cycle all over again. Who here thinks that that's eventually going to work? I agree with you. Here's what we need to be doing. The reality is there are hundreds of libertarians that have been elected, both previously and currently. We can win races in Utah, across the country. We do win races across the country. And if we focused our resources on those types of races that we can win, city council races, county council races, state legislative races, we can do many things. First of all, we're giving ourselves something to do. We're working together. We're building camaraderie. We're actually becoming compatriots instead of fighting each other over, the concepts of different definitions of property rights and things like that. We're actually working towards getting libertarians elected. And when we do that, not only are we fixing our internal problems, not only are we building the candidates that then are going to be able to run for higher offices, not only are we building the campaign teams that are going to run for higher offices, but we're also killing the three main narratives that people use against us. You can't win. Yeah, we do. We win all across the country, including in your cities and counties. Your ideas sound great, but they're not going to work. Yeah, they do. They're working in cities and counties and states across the country. I never hear from you. You hear from us every day. We're in your communities, we're running for offices, and we are winning races and showing what libertarian governance looks like. That is a powerful way, and we have data to show us that when the states that have the most down ballot candidates running, there's almost a total direct correlation between that and the total percentage that our presidential candidate gets. We saw that in Indiana. We saw that in Arkansas. We saw that in many different states. The more candidates they had, the better of a chance that there was of getting a higher vote total for the president. So the reality is it all works together. We need to also, and this is, I think, probably the final thing I want to leave you with before I open up to Q&A if anyone has any questions for me, but we need to shift our narrative somewhat. One of the leading things that we talk to people about is the fact that it's so darn difficult for us to even get on the ballot. And I have literally heard libertarians in campaigning say things like, we don't have a chance of winning. We can't win. They won't let us, whatever, get on the ballot, be on the debate stage, whatever. This makes sense to us to say because we understand how intuitively unfair this is. The average person hears that and says, oh, okay, you don't have a shot of winning. So whatever you have to say, that's fantastic, but I'm not going to vote for you. That coupled with us focusing primarily on those bigger ticket races that we aren't going to win right now, drive home the idea that the L stands for loser, and we need to change that. What we can do instead is focus on the people that can win, okay? We can also focus on things that are outside of electoral politics, getting involved in our communities as libertarians. Don't go in and proselytize liberty. Just show up with a libertarian shirt, or as a candidate who's running for something, but instead of campaigning, just go and help at a soup kitchen, or go and help at a civic event, or go to a rally or protest or march with something that coincides with what you agree with. Go meet with other interest groups like pro-gun rights groups, anti-lockdown groups, pro-marijuana decriminalization groups, any kind of groups that have a common cause with us. Get involved in your communities, help people that are running or run yourself for races that we can actually win now. And then we can eventually scale up in those wins. When we're talking to people about the fact that we're kept off, don't focus on the unfairness or the fact that we're being kept off. Talk to them about the fact that our opponents are so scared of our ideas. Create a new binary, not Republican and Democrat, but the Republicrats that created this mess and the only people that are the viable choice to fix it, which are the libertarians. So I will leave you with that and just say that we can do this. We can do it by working together. We can do it by building our slate of local candidates that can win now, and we can scale that up to greater victories in the near future. And I hope that you join me in this, and let's go win this thing. And like I said, I will open up to whatever questions. I don't know how much more time I have, but someone else can keep track of time. And if anyone wants to ask any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anybody have a question? Come right on up here. Anybody? Here we go.
The first one is always the bravest, and then you start seeing a bunch of people coming afterwards. Thank you, man.
Camera? Okay, should I do this instead?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay.
Can you hear him?
Sure, that's fine. Either way.
Great. Spike, this is Phil, delegate from South Jordan in Salt Lake County.
And I'm sorry, I can barely hear Phil. I'm not sure why.
Is it that one?
Is this better?
Is that better?
It's a little bit better.
Try the
Try the other. Yeah.
How about this one?
Here, now you're a speaker. Yeah, it's a little bit better.
Okay, I'll just ask a question for this. I'm Phil, delegate from South Jordan in Salt Lake County. Big fan of your campaign, was at the rally. It was awesome. Okay, I'll just put it that way. It was really awesome. It was great to have everyone there who participated. And I believe in the message that one day we can live in a free world without a huge government. Question for you is, what are you doing now, personally, within and without the Libertarian Party to promote liberty, other than your podcast? So Liber Podcast, go ahead. Thanks.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, man. And that's an excellent question. So inside the party, what I'm doing is I'm going around the country, both on Zoom and in person, to talk with people specifically about what I think we need to do to be able to grow the party from the grassroots level. I'm also working with candidates and groups within the Libertarian Party, different affiliates and different candidates across the country, to show them the things that I'm good at. Okay. I'm not a jack of all trades. What I am good at is organization building, marketing and messaging, and sales, and community building. And so I'm focusing on how to do those types of things. Those are the things that I've learned in my, gosh, I'm so old, 23 years of business that I've been in now. And I have learned those things, and that's what I'm imparting to others. Outside of the party, besides like media appearances and stuff like that, I'm meeting with other groups, like meeting with Normal. I met with Normal in Atlanta. I met with Fee in Atlanta, and meeting with other groups like that to try to find common cause and see where we can work together. I've actually got some pretty exciting news that's going to be coming out within the next month and a half that I can't really say yet. But there's some incredible stuff that's going to be happening that I'm going to be doing over the next few years. The bottom line is that you're going to be seeing a lot of me. I'm going to be traveling across the country. I'm going to be doing a lot of media, and it's all going to be with one common goal: to create a culture of liberty, and to foster, there already is a culture of liberty, to foster a culture of liberty, and to bring people from all different walks of life into our very empathetic message and very connecting message that people do best when they are most free, and we don't have to live the way that we are. So I'm just getting started, and I'm very excited to continue moving on that. And I thank you for your question.
Spike, first of all, thank you so much for going on the radio earlier this week with John. It's always great to hear you on the airwaves, and your podcast is fantastic. My question is, we have a lot of people here who are new. We have a lot of people who are just getting involved and are seeing clearly that the Libertarian Party has a pulse. We have strong activists out there, but
Yes.
There's also a growing group of I'm just concerned. I want to make sure that we're all coming together. I know there's different caucuses and groups that are here, and I love that they're here because the energy they bring is very helpful in this fertile ground that is the Libertarian Party. But what would you say is the most unity? Like what is your concept of helping us unify and come together instead of bickering and fighting? That's my question.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. Putting aside what I'd already said about that, some of this tends to deal with itself when people have lots of things to work together on. They may still disagree on something, but they build camaraderie just by working together, and they feel more hope because they're actually seeing the fruits of their labor. And that makes them less likely to try to find someone to blame for why we're not winning when we actually are we are winning more. I will say that the most unifying thing I can say to this group right here is remember why you're a libertarian. I don't know the schedule of this, if you guys have already done bylaws and platform and all that stuff, or if that's still coming. But either way, because you can use this in the future. when you are in the midst of arguing over something that is very important. I mean, not every argument in bylaws and platforms is over where to put the semicolon. There are times that there are incredibly important things. And in fact, the person that's arguing about the semicolon would argue that's important too. But when you are getting in these very lively and hearty discussions and debates, which are necessary. We are libertarians. We are not yes men and yes women. We do not just go along to get along. If we were like that, we'd still be with Republicans and Democrats. So it's important that we settle these things and not just go with the flow. At the same time, while you are doing that, remember that every single person in this room is your ally and has common cause with you. We have far too many opponents out there to make opponents of the people that are in this room or people that are watching online. We need to remember what we're here for. And there are many different things that brought us here. It might have been the wars. It might have been the war on drugs. It might have been brutal, crushing taxes and regulations, destroying people's livelihoods. It might have been the war on your right to keep and bear arms. It might have been the wars on victimless crimes. It might have been police brutality and unaccountability of people in power. It might have been something personal that happened to you that government did to you. It might be seeing children in cages in camps. It might have been a myriad of different things. It might have been many different things at once. Whatever those things are, you are in the room with the people who are going to fight by your side to end those things and to replace it with a world that is set free. And that's an important thing to remember. Doesn't mean don't argue. It doesn't mean don't debate. It doesn't mean not to stand your ground. It means these are not your enemies. However that you have to speak, speak as you would speak to an ally and a friend. Okay? Try your best to remember, even in the height of those disagreements, that these are the people that are going to be by your side when we accomplish these things. And if you look around and say, well, this seems like a relatively small group to accomplish those things, these are the group sizes that started revolutions. These are the group sizes that ended slavery or began the process of ending slavery. These are the group sizes that started things like the Magna Carta. There are so many, every major event that has ever happened that resulted in people being freer and better off started with small, determined groups of people saying, I don't care how hopeless the odds seem. I don't care how much the chips are stacked against me. I will continue to fight against this until I can't fight any longer, because the only alternative to this is just to shrug my shoulders and say, I guess it's going to be this way. And I refuse that. You are filled with a room of people who are just as determined as you are. So just remember that this is how we are going to accomplish this. So just remember, you're here with allies and friends.
Hey Spike, it's Tyson Reese. I'm a delegate.
Hey man, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm a delegate for Davis County, host of Utah Liberty Talk, and I know that you have a specific approach in kind of drawing the youth towards this kind of stuff. And I wanted to ask you, what ways do you think? I see a lot of youth here, which makes me very happy. I wanted to see what kind of ways do you think we could, utilize our youth and those new voters that are, learning the ways of the government, how life works, and how we can apply these principles to our lives. In what ways do you think we can appeal to our new voters?
Thank you, Tyson. I appreciate that question. I think, first of all, we need to realize that thanks to the Federal Reserve and the disastrous cost of living increases that has caused, coupled with all the other disastrous policies that have driven up the cost of living and just made living increasingly hard, we need to keep in mind, I say this as a very, very old millennial. I'm 38. I'm on the cusp of being a Gen Xer. So I'm well outside of what I would consider to be young at this point. We need to remember that the people that are in their teens, well, let me take a step back, actually. We often think that the best way to talk to young people is with other young people. And there's nothing wrong with that. That can actually be helpful. And it's good to have that representation. Right now, one of the most popular politicians with young people is Bernie Sanders, who is a very, 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 very old man. Okay. The reason he's connecting with them is because he is pretending to empathize with them. Okay. He's also selling them on some terrible ideas, but he's pretending to empathize with them. If you're not in the, let's say, 30 and under age group, and even if you are, just take a little journey with me. because this is what I hear from young people over and over and over again in this country. They were told for as long as they can remember that if they worked hard in school, and if they kept their nose to the grindstone, and if they kept pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, and if they went to school, went to college, and they got a degree, then everything would work itself out. And so they were put through the No Child Left Behind Scantron baby system, where they were treated like cattle. Then they went into the college system, where they were treated like debt slaves. Now 40% of them dropped out once they realized that there wasn't any hope for them there. The other 60% of them are having difficulty often finding jobs that match with the marketable skills that they have. Their student debt very often is more than their parents or grandparents, or more than their grandparents have ever had in debt, unless they refinanced their home recently, and more than their parents paid for a home, and they have little to nothing to show for it. And they hear largely from two different groups of people. They hear from one group of people that tells them, hey, listen, it sounds like you're entitled. Maybe you're eating too many avocados. You need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And frankly, I think you're a little bit entitled, and you don't know what it's like to have to work hard. And this is all your fault. You should have worked hard. Maybe you should invest. Well, not like the GameStop kids did. Don't invest like that. Invest the way where you don't really make any money, right? So they get that. And then they have another group of people who says, you've been robbed. The reason you can't, I didn't even get into healthcare. The reason that you can't afford anything, that you are living with roommates, that you're struggling to make ends meet, that you're sitting on 5 or 6 figures of debt and are almost 50% likely to have dropped out and still have that debt. Good luck getting it discharged in court. The reason all that's happened is because government has robbed you to feed the wealthy elites. And by the way, that's true. That is why that's happened. The reason you can't afford healthcare is because older generations are being fleeced of all their money to give to those wealthy elites. That's also true. All the things I'm saying are true right now. Then they say, the answer to all of this is we're going to tax those people and give you the free things that you have a human right to. Now, which of those connecting messages do you think work for them? Now, imagine if we show up and go, well, the problem is you don't know what natural rights are. Or negative rights are. You're saying you have a right to health care, but I have news for you, friend. You don't have a right to anything, really. If you think about it, it's a service. And you shouldn't be able to take from the labor of others. Sounds like you want slavery. And then you walk away because you won that argument. How many young people do you think you connected with that? We need to, and not just with young people. This is true across the board. This is true of people of all different ages and sizes and colors and ethnicities and backgrounds and sexual orientations and genders and whatever else. Income levels, geography, everything else. When we come to people determined to win an argument with them and to throw our philosophy at them, we will win that argument. We'll also win some new enemies who hate us and think that we are saying that we don't care about them, that we'd rather argue with them, and that if we ever get in power, we plan to neglect them heavily and don't care what happens to them. We need to focus. We know the reason we're doing that is because we already know that our ideas work. We know that getting government out of healthcare makes it affordable. We know that it's stupid that we're arguing over who pays the bill for healthcare instead of talking about why the bill's so damn high to begin with. We know that getting government out of higher education will make it affordable again by bringing it back down to the price equilibrium. We know all this stuff. They don't. So why don't we tell them that? We can win another argument. I've learned something as a very happily married man to a very beautiful woman. I can win an argument or I can be happy. We should apply that to our conversations with normies. Okay, we should be applying that. She's going to barge in any minute now. We can apply that to our conversations with normies. Okay, when someone comes to one of my events or to a Q&A or is talking to you and says, "Well, what are libertarians going to give us for education?" Instead of launching into a diatribe about how you don't owe that person anything and how dare they even suggest such a thing, and they clearly haven't heard of Rothbard or whatever. Instead, we can say, we're going to give you back everything. The federal and state governments have robbed you of your ability to be able to make decisions for your schools. They've robbed you of the money that you would need to be able to put resources into your schools. They have imposed upon you a bunch of barriers and regulations that do not work, and your teachers are forced to use them by law. And if you want to homeschool your children, great. You still got to pay all those taxes. We're going to give it all back to you. These sociopaths and the cronies who put them in office have robbed you of your power, your freedom, your decision-making ability, and of course, your money. And we're going to get in there and we're going to take it all back and put it back in your hands where it always damn well belonged. And we can use that answer for education, for healthcare, for higher education, for police accountability, for climate change. We can use it for anything that anyone cares about. Young people are not special or unique from anyone else. They're human beings like the rest of us. They're just experiencing the logical conclusion of bad monetary policy and bad regulatory policy. And they are the most acute victims of it right now as an age group. So why don't we empathize with them? Why don't we express that we understand what they're going through? And then we can explain to them how it got here. Then we can explain how our common sense libertarian solutions are the way to get out of it. I have no desire to tell someone to pull themselves up by their bootstraps when I know damn well that the bootstrap license is $50,000 and they don't have it. So instead, I'd rather go to them and explain why it's that way and how we can fix it. And that's how we can talk to people, including young people. Thank you. I don't know if there's any more questions.
Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Okay. Yes.
When you're talking about how we remain a small minority, I personally want to figure out why, like right down to the root. And have you thought about what it is that motivates people, what the need is they're trying to fill, that causes them to seek government solutions and to boss their neighbors and themselves? Is that how I put it? Using the vote to resolve their guilt. We talk about the needs of the young people, but there's a whole lot of idealism at all levels that seems to be left unrealized, that seems to motivate a lot of people.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, look at how more than likely how your individual life is, and not just the person asking this, everyone listening to this or watching this. Think of all the things that you have to face every day, and think of all the difficulties that are imposed upon you by government. Now, because you're a libertarian, you know that government did that. But imagine if you didn't. If you think about what the average person goes through, if you think about how up to their neck that they are with bills and concerns and worries about their kids and their future, and whether they can make ends meet, or whether they can take care of an ailing parent. Now they've got a pandemic that they're worried about, and they've got lockdown imposed economic disasters that are happening, and more people that are dealing with depression and suicide and addiction and abuse and all these different things. Now imagine that person has been conditioned their entire life to believe that we live in a society that is governed by goodish people who are going to take from us as they see fit. But, friends, don't forget that when they take from you, they'll give back to you whatever you need. Now, of course, we're hearing that and we're saying, well, that sounds an awful lot like communism with extra steps. But to them, they're saying, well, that's what I've been told my whole life. I was told that if I see a stranger and they're talking to me, go find a stranger with a badge and a gun. They'll save me. We have been taught our entire lives that presumed authority is a good thing, and that we simply have to try to figure out what we can get from it, what we need. Okay, this is true of progressives. This is true of conservatives. And as you become more and more libertarian, you realize, no, it's all a shell game. They're not in it for us. They're in it for them. We already all know that politicians are liars and sociopaths, and I say this as a politician now, liars and sociopaths and not me though. I'm one of the good ones, but yeah, politicians and sociopaths, and they're not really all that bright, and they make dumb decisions, and they're very corrupt and all that. But that's the other guy, not our guy. Our guy's the truth teller. I love AOC, Bernie Sanders, Ted Cruz. Oh man, I'm not going to say a couple names in here that might offend a couple of y'all, but I love my particular politician in DC that says stuff I like sometimes before voting for the warmonger agenda whenever they need to. What happens is that the average person, yeah, I'm definitely not going to say those names. The average person is thoroughly abused into believing and conditioned into believing that there's only one way to fix this, and it's government. Which is why, again, when someone comes to me and says, what are you going to do for my health care? Instead of focusing on how I'm going to leave them alone, because leave you alone to us sounds like I'm going to set you free. Leave you alone to them sounds like I'm going to neglect you, because again, they don't realize that leave you alone means give you your money back, give you your power back, give you your freedom back. So why don't we say that? If that's what we really mean, we're not just going to leave them alone. I'm not going to just say to someone, hey, schmuck, that's your problem. Bye, see you never. I'm going to say, hey, here's everything back. Hey, maybe we can work together on this. Or maybe people close to you can work together on this. Or people with you that have shared values with you can work together on whatever the problem is that we're talking about, right? That's what we're saying. So let's say that. Now, going back to your original question, why are we a minority? Well, number one, we have many, many, many factors against them, and most of them are not our fault. There are things we can't control. The people in power definitely not want our word to get out there, okay? I have, in the last 4 months, been on more national media than Joe Jorgensen and I were combined during the entire presidential campaign. That's not a coincidence, okay? And I'm not bragging. The point of that is that they weren't going to give us that time during the campaign because they didn't want people to hear our ideas while they're deciding who to vote for or not to, which incidentally is why we should be talking to people 24/7, 365. That's going back to the original thing. We aren't going to get the attention. We're going to have to fight for it. They're not going to platform us for free, and they're not going to grant us a favor. The crony corporate media and the crony corporate government are not going to give us the attention we need to dismantle their gravy train. It's not going to happen. They're going to make it harder and harder and harder and harder and harder, and they are going to use all of the tools in their toolbox, including pop culture and media, to fight against us and our ideas. What we have is something much more powerful than that, which is the truth. What people intuitively know to be true. They go to the movies and celebrate the underdogs, the people fighting against tyranny, and then they go home and don't realize they're cheerleading the tyranny. They aren't making that connection. All we have to do is help them make that connection. One of the biggest things that we do, that is a problem of ours that we can solve, is we have to stop the martyr rhetoric, because it's not coming off as martyr rhetoric. It's coming off as loser rhetoric. We have these great truth tellers, but they won't let us talk. Okay, well then I guess I can't vote for you because you can't win. That is what the average, pragmatically thinking, and I'm not talking about libertarian prags, I'm talking about pragmatic, the original definition of it. The average person who's thinking, how can I use my vote most effectively, is saying, oh, okay, so you can't win. All right, well, your ideas sound great, but sorry, can't help you. We need to change our message. Our message is we are winning, we are growing, we are rising up, and there's nothing that they can do to stop us. And when you phrase it to that and you give them actual candidates that they can vote for without being afraid they're going to throw their vote away for a lesser evil, instead, give them people that in the city council races, county council races, statewide races, and if at the same time, you're also involved in their community outside of electoral politics, that is such a powerful thing that you are doing there. You are showing them that we are involved, we do care, we are not about neglect, we are going to win, and when we win, things will be better. And kind of piggybacking off of this, I want to talk about the difference between, do I want to go down this route during a political convention? Yeah, sure, let's do it. I'm not here, so I don't have to worry about running away from you. There have been two kinds of let's call them community leaders in the last, over the times. And they kind of fall broadly into two categories. One category are people who advocate primarily to use, or solely to curry political favor, to use the electoral process. We're going to march, we're going to vote, we're going to demand stuff or rights or whatever. We're going to basically ask the people in power to let us have things. Then there's a group of people, again, broadly speaking, who their primary focus is on economic empowerment, getting people armed, letting them know the whole thing's a sham. The people in that first group tend to get fawning media coverage and deferential treatment and documentaries about how awesome they are and shows on MSNBC. And the people in that second group tend to get killed and slandered, and their good name is destroyed. And sometimes their families are killed too, so they can't even say what a good person that person was. And there's an obvious reason for that. If I am in power, I want you to believe that you have a say. I want you to believe that you have a choice. And I want you to believe that you are doing something productive. And so I will be more than happy to give you demagogues to vote for. I will be more than happy to ignore the results of referendums if I don't like them. I'd be more than happy to watch you march and shout and chant before I have my enforcers round you up and throw you in jail for the weekend. That doesn't bother me. I can't do a thing to empowered people who are armed and able to defend themselves and don't need me. Now, the political electoral process is an important part of this process for the purpose of harm reduction. Try to get as many people into office to undo or reduce that harm and try to turn it around. But it can't be the only part. If we let our tyrants and oppressors know the only way that we're going to deal with you is by voting and marching and running candidates, they'll go, fantastic, you will never get to power. Have a great day. If instead we also do that, but we also focus, and I would dare say put more focus, and we can do this as local and state affiliate parties. I'm not telling you to leave this convention. I'm telling you that as part of what you're doing as the party, get involved in mutual aid, get involved in education efforts, get involved in arming and training and shooting events, get involved in letting the people know not just that they should be free, not just how we can do better when we are free, not just how freedom will work, but how to actually be free. When we do that work, we're actually able to accomplish things. We're actually able to win. And yes, that will mean we get more pushback, but we'll also win. You know, the old first they laugh at you, or first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Right now, we're between numbers 2 and 3. Some of us are on numbers 2, some of us are on numbers 3. I want to be solidly in 3 and moving straight to winning. So I think that those are the things we can do to go from, you know, a fringe minority to the dominant, not even just the dominant political party, but the dominant way of thinking in this country and around the world, that we should be free, that we should not be controlled by people who have no stake in what our communities look like. I just ranted for like 20 minutes, so thank you.
My name is Erica. I run a Libertarian club here in the Valley, in Salt Lake Valley.
Cool.
And it's a social and educational club. So basically we're trying to foster a culture that supports and protects liberty in the Valley. And so I really identify with your message of trying to create a culture of liberty. And I've wondered for a long time, I think Matt Kibbe also is really into this stuff. Like, why don't we see movies with more libertarian messaging? Obviously, I'm not expecting it from Hollywood, but like, why don't we go ahead and fund those efforts as well? We do have like some YouTube channels that create good content, like We the Internet, for example. But it'd be really great to see more of that. I think that like the battle is going to be like political. It's going to be in the media. It's going to be in education. And I just was wondering, like, you yourself are going to pursue like creating more culture. Like, do you have any plans to do some of that more subtle media, like music, movies, and stuff? It's not literally just like, you know, a founding father riding in on a horse, like liberty stuff that's just more instinctual, kind of like your guys' Crazy Ones ad. Like, that was a really great ad. I showed it to a lot of people. They loved it. They felt inspired by it. And I mean, so much of it is so inspiring. So I was just wondering if you guys had any plans for that. Thank you.
So is this a very subtle way to ask me when I'm dropping my mixtape? No, so I will spare you any singing or dancing. Actually, I'm a good dancer, but singing, I probably won't do any singing. Here's what I will say. So a lot of people who didn't necessarily know who the hell I was when I got the nomination, I actually got my start in libertarian activism through entertainment. When I retired from my business, I decided that I was going to use entertainment as a means to bring people in to the message of liberty. And so my podcasts and my shows and things like that, have largely been geared over time. They become more overtly libertarian, but they really didn't used to be. We didn't use words like liberty or anything like that. We used entertainment and talking about topical events in a funny way to then, we called it, gold pilling or spike pilling people into libertarianism, right? So it's like you get them and they go, oh, haha, that's funny. Wow, that's a good, oh, wow, gosh, oh no, I'm a libertarian. So it was, get them in through an entertainment means, but then actually hit them with a message. So I think that that's an important part of what we need to do. You mentioned that, there are these movies, and I think I had talked about it just before that, there are these movies that people go to, and we're celebrating the libertarians in that, and then we go home, and many of us are outraged that someone's speaking out against vaccine passports, right? So it's a weird dichotomy that we have, and it's cognitive dissonance is what it is. It is someone who is intuitively understanding that something is wrong and that we should be fighting the establishment, which, by the way, is used very thoroughly by the establishment. Donald Trump's going to drain the swamp and fight the establishment. Bernie Sanders is going to fight the establishment right before he endorses and campaigns for the establishment. Donald Trump's going to drain the swamp right before he becomes the king of the swamp creatures and adds more debt than any president ever did before him. There are any president in one term. They've harnessed that anti-establishment message. So we can't just be anti-establishment. We can't just say that because everyone's heard that. Anti-establishment has become the new disruptive, which was the new thinking outside of the box, right? So we've used these terms to death. And I think that it is important to, and again, I'm not going to sing. I'm not. If you want to turn people away from liberty, have me sing to them. But we do have singers, and we do have artists, and we do have entertainers, and we do have a lot of comedians, and we have a lot of people that can do those types of things. And I think it's important to do that. And yes, you can be libertarian in doing it, but you don't have to be like, hey, I'm the liberty singer or I'm the liberty comic. It's just, no, I'm the singer, I'm the comic, but this is what I believe. The comics and the entertainers and people out there that are progressive or conservative, they don't usually be like, I'm the conservative singer, I'm the progressive comedian. They're that, and then they just reflect that in what they say and what they do. And we can do similar things. Here's another thing that you can do. Gosh, do I want to do this? Again, you guys can't really touch me right now, so sure. I think we are able to relate to people like normal people when we're not talking politically. And then we start talking politically, and everyone's like, oh no, they're doing that thing again. And because we go from being a normal person who wants to, be in a civil situation with other normal people mode to, I have to share my perfect philosophy with others. And the only way that they can get out of it is by conceding defeat or having to engage in a logical fallacy. And I'm going to call them out if they engage in a logical fallacy. How dare they do that in my living room? You have to stop that. Like when you are talking to people about liberty, talk to them the same way you're talking about like your plans for the weekend. Like you relate to people. It would be better to have a nice conversation with someone about gun control or circumcision on Facebook. Don't actually never talk about circumcision. A conversation with someone about a divisive and controversial or heated topic, and have a nice conversation with them where they get to share their ideas that are wrong, and you get to say things like, yeah, I get your point, I know where you're coming from on that, I just think blah 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 blah, but I get where you're coming from, and I'm just glad that we both recognize that this is a problem, that shootings are a problem if we're talking about gun control or something like that. I would much rather that person walk away saying, yeah, that didn't make a lot of sense, but I do know that where they're coming from, and a couple of the things they said made a good point. And overall, they recall having a nice conversation with you, and you've planted seeds in there that their subconscious is having to reconcile that they had a good experience while being exposed to ideas that totally challenge everything that they currently consciously believe. I'd much rather have that happen than that person go, man, that's why I'm sick of talking with I never talk politics with that person. Be relatable in all things, not just in non-political things. And I don't know if I've gone over my time or if there are more questions. I'm happy to be here for a little bit. Hey.
Hi, Spike. I'm Devin. So throughout this whole thing, I've heard a lot about kind of like on-the-ground activism, and I was wondering if you had any posters or comments about perhaps like cyber activism, your social media platform, or what it means to be not only a candidate that goes door to door, but also representing yourself online in this new world where we have such power in technology. And yeah.
That's an excellent question. It's interesting. A lot of the same principles or concepts behind what works well in on the ground activism is kind of the same in online activism. I want to preface this by saying, if you are running for a local office and trying to, like contesting it with the intent of winning, not just spreading a message, your main focus needs to be on that less sexy stuff, the door knocking, the sign waving, especially if you're in a municipality where it's conceivable that you can knock on, a large number or a majority of the doors there. Focus on that. It's better for you to get in front of people. That's always better than, what you can do online. But with that said, you can spend a lot less time online to reach a lot more people, some of whom may not even be in your area, but you're getting that message out there. But, we have to look at what the principles are behind in-person stuff. You have to build a community. You have to find your community or build one if it doesn't exist. Well, that exists online too. Whether you're on Facebook and going into Facebook groups that have similar ideas, or, working on curating a group of people that agree with your ideas on your page or in your group that you've created, whether you're on Twitter, reaching out to prominent people who agree with your ideas, or local people who agree with your ideas, or local people who disagree with your ideas, and engaging them in a lively, respectful, nice, relatable conversation. Please be relatable. Or whether you're setting up Discord servers or TikTok, I don't know how TikTok works, setting up whatever on social media, setting up your communities. What's the other part of that? You have to present your message in a way that connects with the people in that area or that venue. Well, that's the same thing. Whatever you would be saying in person would be the same things you would be posting or making videos of on these different social media sites and venues. Depending on the resources you have, if you have the resources to make your own website, that's acts as a funnel for people to, you create calls to action to bring them into your website so you can show them more stuff, then do that as well. The important thing is pretty similar to the same principles that you would use in person for in-person stuff, or for, outside in real life stuff. Find like-minded people, find people to engage with, work within existing communities, create your own community if necessary, and just spread a message that is relatable and engaging, and also talk to the people about what their concerns are. If you are running, and this is true of anything, if you are running a city council race, you probably don't need to explain the Federal Reserve too much. You can maybe casually mention it in talking about why the cost of living is high, but then you got to pivot back to what you can actually do at the city level, or what your main issue is. It's we as libertarians systemize things. So we're not just looking, when we look at a problem that's in the city, we go, well, the reason that this is happening in the city is because the city government's doing this, but that's because of the state government's doing this, and that's because the national government's doing this, and that's because we have this underlying principle in this country that is wrong, that believes that blah, 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 blah. You have to explain what you're going to be able to do, if anything, at the city level. You have to make it hyper local. And the same thing online. If you're running for city council and you have an online thing, you have to focus on what the people in your city care about. Or if you're running in for county council, what the people in your county care about, in ways that connect with them. Yes, you are reaching a wider audience, but that wider audience can't vote for you, right? So you've got to get the people that are voting for you there. So I would just, the same principles that you would in person. Be engaging, create community, actively seek out the people that can work with you, and make sure that you're not talking past them. You're talking about what they care about.
Hi, I'm Courtney.
Hey.
So as you know, LP Kentucky's tweet made everybody go crazy. And
I'm sorry, do you mind speaking up just a little bit? I can't hear you all that well.
can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. As you know, LP Kentucky's tweet made everybody go crazy. And it made libertarian trend. And so my question is, do you feel like the adage, no bad press is better than no press. I was just wondering how you feel about that.
Thank you. Bad press is better than no press in most cases. Good press is better than bad press. Talking specifically about the Libertarian Party of Kentucky's tweet, I want to first say the extremes that you heard, that it is the truth telling that is going to spread the message of liberty to everyone, and it's a terrible horrible thing that's going to make everyone hate libertarians. And then some people saying it was anti-Semitic, which it definitely was not. These are both wrong. Okay. Here's my opinion on this. Okay. And I want you to know it's okay for you to disagree with me on this. All right. We're not all going to have the exact opinion on how best to specifically message someone. I believe that the Libertarian Party of Kentucky, well, let me step back a little bit. Messaging is about framing. It's about positioning. The reason that I do well in debates or in panels, when I'm on panels, the reason I keep getting invited to panels because I do well in them is because instead of just saying what needs to be said, I say what needs to be said, but I'm also considering the positions and the framework of the other people who are making arguments there. And I consider where what I'm saying is going to position me. So I always try to present things in a way that put the person that opposes what I'm about to say or believe on the defensive. Make them defend their bad ideas on their own terms. So for example, when I talk about vaccine passports, I tend to focus on the fact that vaccine passports empower abusers, because abusers now know, if there's a vaccine passport, that all they have to do to keep their victims from being able to go to abuse shelters or even just go to the store and get out of the home for even a brief period of time is keep them from getting vaccinated. And, we're having these debates over whether it's elitist or racist or anti-poor to require a voting ID to be able to vote. Well, how about requiring a smartphone app to be able to go to Walmart or the school or the mall or really anywhere, homeless shelter? These are the types of arguments that you can use against the people who support these things to make them now have to challenge why they want to empower abusers, make it easier to discriminate against the poor, and so forth. And I do similar things on the right when I'm talking about, if I'm talking about, immigration issues, I will talk about what the founders intended for immigration. I'll ask them to defend the government telling them who they can or can't hire or host or house on their own private property. I go on what their defense is, what they'll have to defend on and explain against their own values or their own stated values. What the Libertarian Party of Kentucky's tweet did was two things. First of all, by being so hyperbolic, it gave people something to now make us all have to defend anytime we bring up. Every time I tweet about vaccine passports, and I've had to double and triple and quadruple down on tweeting about it to try to drown it out. Every time I do, here come the people going, oh, is it like the Holocaust? Oh, do you think we got to put the Stars of David patches on? It was an unforced error. Here's why. It was not anti-Semitic. It was not all of the terrible things that people have said, but what it was it took something and compared it to something so much worse that it actually minimized what we were talking about. It also now forces everyone who wants to talk about it to be on the defensive about that thing. Yes, it sparked a big conversation, but it sparked a conversation where we're the ones being flanked and having to defend our position. Okay, so from a pure message framing standpoint, it was not a good idea. Okay, it did. I've heard that it has brought some people in. Some people love the message, and it brought them in. I will tell you, just from the analytics that I've looked at, it turned more people away than it brought people in. Okay, any message is going to bring some people in. That's always true. There was a way to talk about the fact that this wasn't the first time that IBM has worked with a government to create a caste system without going straight to the Holocaust and putting Star of David badges on people. And in fact, now, when I try to have that conversation about how the private sector and public sector working together is corporatism, which is the economic plank of fascism, I now have to be more careful in how I do that. And so do so many other people. So the idea behind what they were trying to say, I understand. There were just a lot of better ways to say it. And I also think we've already talked about it way more than we needed to have, like literally. Like I've already said more than I want to ever say again. And that's not against the person that asked. I'm glad you asked, because it's a good example to talk about how you can message things and still say something similar, but without putting yourself on the defensive in the process of doing so. But I do think that this was not on either side. It's a hill that so many people are choosing to die on, not the vaccine passports, but specifically the tweet. And why are we dying on this hill? Other people have already stopped talking about it. We're still the ones talking about this. And I think, okay, great. Whether you liked it, you didn't like it, let's go and do other stuff now. Let's go talk about other reasons why vaccine passports are bad, or why mandatory vaccination is bad, or why lockdowns are bad, or whatever. Whether you liked it, you didn't like it, let's move forward and come up with some good messaging for these things.
All right, Spike, I'm going to say thank you so much for the time you took with us today. We're going to pan the camera around so you can see how much we appreciate you. And thank you. You are the power. We are the power. You are the power. Thank you.
Well, no, wait. Well, hold on. I'm not the power. I'm Spike Cohen. You are the power. I'm Spike Cohen. I'm not the power. Hey, guys, thank you again so much for having me. I love y'all. Thank you for the hard work that you're doing. You are fantastic. Let's go win victories, okay? Thank you.